Welcome to the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, where we have open and honest conversations about co-parenting, separation, divorce, and the hardest question of all, should you stay or should you go? I'm Kate Anthony, your divorce survival guide, and I'm here to help you navigate some of the roughest waters you've ever swum in and answer some of your toughest questions. I've been to hell and back, and now it's my mission in life to help you get to the other side of this process with your sanity and your heart intact.
Hey everyone, welcome back. So just a reminder that on March 14th, we're going to be doing another one of, we've named them now. It's Coffee Clatch with Kate. And it's basically an open Q&A. And you can register for it. You need to register because for privacy purposes, obviously. So you can do that. There's a link in the show notes where you can do that. And it'll be posted on social media and stuff, so you can find it somehow. So again, March 14th, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, and you can submit your questions in advance as well through the link. If you register, you'll get all the information. And the last one was really successful and really great. So I hope to continue to be doing these things for you guys. Today, I have with me, amazing guest, Josh Kershenbaum. He is a dedicated peacemaker with extensive training and experience in both mediation and collaborative law. Before practicing law, Josh was a public school teacher in Newton, Massachusetts, and he was a special ed teacher. And so his specialty is now in helping people with kids with special needs and or disabilities navigate the divorce process and create parenting plans that will go on to encompass needs, not just right now, but well into the future. He earned certifications in both negotiation and mediation at Harvard Law School's program on negotiation and trained in divorce and family mediation with mediation luminaries Forrest, Woody Mosten, and our friend Susan Guthrie at the Mosten Guthrie Academy, where he's now on the training faculty. Without further ado, please welcome to the podcast, Josh Kershenbaum. Josh, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited for this conversation. I think it's a really important one for so many people.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here, and I'm really thank you so much for seeing the importance of this topic and for devoting a whole episode to it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay. First of all, we are talking really about getting divorced or navigating divorce or even making the decision to get divorced when you have kids with either special needs or disabilities, whatever you want to call it. Well, what do we mean? How do we define special needs, disabilities? How would you define that in this context?
Such a good question, and I really appreciate it, and I think that a lot of your listeners will appreciate it as well. We hear all of these terms, and everybody has their favorites, and some people have terms that they really don't like. So it's good to talk about that, like right up front. I try to use what I call person-centric terms, like children with special needs or children with disabilities. And for me, I think what's important for people to understand is I use those terms really broadly. I've spent my whole professional life working with families who have children with special needs and disabilities. And I have tried out different terms and words, and I've heard people use lots of different ones. And I've sort of come to these because to me, they feel the most inclusive and they feel the most respectful of the people that I'm working with. And what I try to tell people is, listen, when I use those words, I'm casting the largest, widest, biggest embrace possible to include everything from physical and medical conditions, to mental health and emotional issues, to educational and learning and cognitive issues, social issues, anything, any challenges that people might be facing, that children might be facing in any aspect of their life. I use it really broadly. Not everybody does. And clearly it's really important to ask what people mean when they use those terms. So I just want people to know that I'm coming from a place of great respect for the people that I work with and the children and families that I work with. And so whatever terms I use, I hope people hear it as inclusively and as respectfully as possible.
I love that. I mean, I love the sort of attention to the detail of the language, right? Because I think it is important to be inclusive in this way. And we live in a time where that's sort of increasingly difficult or put on, on blast or whatever. So you and I are on the same page on all that.
Absolutely. It goes beyond that even, it goes beyond just the respect issue. A lot of parents don't necessarily ever think or hear that their child might have a disability or might have special needs. A lot of parents, I think, don't necessarily think along those lines. And that's okay, unless not thinking along those lines kind of makes your life and your situation more complicated or more difficult, or maybe keeps you from accessing services and supports that would be really useful to you. And so I try to encourage people to keep an open mind about it and maybe consider whether or not, maybe your child does have some needs that are worth paying attention to in the divorce process, for example, or perhaps they need supports and services that they're not getting in school. So I ask people to consider, even if you've never thought of your child as having special needs or disabilities, as we have this conversation, think about whether this conversation is still maybe very relevant and important to you, whether anybody's ever diagnosed your child with anything or not.
Also, I think it's also a good preemptive thing, right? Like, because if you're getting divorced or you're considering getting divorced and your kid is young, you have no idea what might be coming down the pike in terms of, diagnoses or issues or, special needs. I mean, I know that, I think I've told you this before, Josh, that, my ex and I had very, very different, I would say that my son had special needs when we were dealing with a very, very severe ADHD diagnosis, which is now, he's 17, and it is now confirmed that he has that, really confirmed, objectively confirmed that this is a very severe diagnosis, to the degree that we had to actually pull him out of school his senior year. What's hilarious to me is that I would, when he was 8, 9, I would use the term special needs. I would say, our son has special needs. And my ex would get so angry about it. And he would
this is very common.
Yeah. And he'd be like, how can you say that he has special needs? That's like, that makes him sound like he's, and he's like, he would say things like, that's an offense to kids, to parents with kids who have actual special needs. I have one of my best friends has a son who is very, very severely autistic. And, like that, like he's like, that's an affront to this friend. And I was like, actually, she's pretty clear that our son actually has these special needs.
It's a great point to bring up. And a lot of people listening are going to resonate with this, because what you're describing is such a common situation where, the parents might not agree, right? They might not necessarily see it the same way. And sometimes the way that comes out is in a disagreement about these labels and these terms. And you use the example you gave is so common, where somebody says, but wait, my son doesn't have special needs. He has ADD. And another parent might say, well, wait a minute, that is a special need. And some of it, it's interesting. Some of it is kind of regional. I've noticed that there are in different parts of the country, these terms seem to mean different things than in others.
Interesting.
In some places, special needs seems to refer more to kind of almost like educational or or sort of cognitive developmental, and disabilities seems to refer more to physical. But in other places, the words are used kind of interchangeably. But the kind of important thing that you're raising here is that parents don't always agree about this, and it can be a source of conflict and confusion and contention. And in the divorce context, it's a significant challenge when the parents don't see eye to eye about what the child's needs are, or maybe they do agree that the child has a particular, say, condition, but they don't necessarily agree about how severe it is, or they don't necessarily agree about what to do about it, or whose responsibility it should be to deal with it. Right.
And I think that sort of in the divorce context, I mean, I guess like how severe it is, how, all of those things are, okay, maybe they're somewhat subjective. But when you're talking about how do we deal with it and what are treatment plans and who makes those decisions, those are really big things.
Yes, they're really big things. And it's fair to point out at this point that these are really big issues for any parents who are getting divorced, whether they think their children have special needs or not. The issue of what their children are going to need from them as parents is an enormous issue in every divorce. It's just that they can be particularly challenging and particularly important and impactful when the needs of the child are somewhat more complex and or somewhat more uncertain. Or that they somehow impact more on the individual parents' day-to-day lives. So when I do this work, I'm trying to look at the divorce through the lens of parents who are going through a particular experience with their child. And what we're trying to do is we're really trying to help the parents think through how the child's needs are going to impact the decisions that they're going to be making during the divorce process. So one thing that kind of rings in my ears since the very beginning, when I first started doing this work, when your ex-husband said something like, "What do you mean he has special needs?" On some level, we might say everybody has special needs. All needs are special, right? Everybody's unique, right? Everybody's got their own needs, and you could say that everybody has special needs. Another way to look at it is that everybody has the same needs, which is kind of true, right? I mean, everybody on some basic level, right, has the same needs: to be safe, right, to be educated, to be healthy, to be loved, to be cared for. We all have those same needs. But where we differ is in perhaps what it's going to take to meet those needs.
Yes, I love that. Yes, that's right.
And where we also differ, right, is kind of how well set up is the society that we are born into to meet our needs, right? If you are sometimes people use the word typical. I don't particularly love that word, but who's typical, right? But what I think of as typical means, well, if you were born into a family, into a community, into a society that was more or less prepared and set up to meet your basic needs, legal system, an educational system, a medical system, right? A family system. Well, then that's a very different experience than if you were born into a world that was not really set up for you, right? It wasn't really set up with you in mind, or with your needs and your differences in mind when they made the rules.
Yeah.
And when they made the system.
The entire education system, right?
The entire education system, for sure. And I mean, thank you for that. I was a special education lawyer for a really long time. So that's near and dear to my heart. Yeah. But it's also, Kate, it's also the entire legal system. And that includes the entire divorce process. It was not set up, it was not designed. I mean, you could say that the legal system for divorce wasn't set up well for anybody, and I would agree with that. But it's particularly badly set up for parents who have children who fall into these categories of having special needs and disabilities, particularly badly set up for them. So what we are trying to do. Yeah,
can you elaborate on that? Like how so? In what way?
Because the basic fundamental thing is that when you think about divorce, what I think a lot of people don't appreciate is that there's different ways of getting through it. There's different processes. And the legal process of literally going to court is going to be based on, it's basically a process where you're turning over the decisions to somebody else, a judge, right? Who's going to have to make all kinds of decisions about your family and about you.
Yep.
Based on a set of rules and formulas and guidelines and standards that were kind of designed to be more or less one size fit all.
That's right.
And then this judge, who doesn't know anything about you, who doesn't know anything about your family, and probably doesn't care a whole lot about one way or the other, is going to take these rather generic rules and is going to try to apply your situation to those generic rules and crank out some kind of an answer. Because you've come to them to say, you decide this for me. In that sense, anytime there's a one size fits all or a generic outside, unknowing, uncaring decision maker making a decision about a family, the less your family sort of conforms to what they think of as the norm, the less likely it is that the result is going to actually fit your needs. So, for example, right? So if they're talking about calculating support for you, right, based on a set of factors that don't really consider the impact that your child's needs have on your ability to, say, keep and hold a job or work full time, they're making calculations about what your financial situation is going to be in the future without really considering how your child's needs might change over time and might wind up, for example, requiring special educational services or additional supports. How in the world are they going to issue you any kind of an order or a result that is going to actually meet your needs? To make it really simple, if your family, the more unique your family situation is, the more you need to be in control of those decisions. Because no one's going to understand your needs, your really specific needs, and your child's really specific needs, right? Better than you. Right. Better than you and your spouse.
And you can't expect that judges are going to be trained in special education or, right? Like, I mean, these are things.
More than that, Kate, you can expect that they're not.
Right. Right. You can also expect that they're not going to be trained in domestic violence or any number of things that they actually make judgments and rulings on. Right.
What makes, in the way I see it is, it's almost like what makes these special needs is precisely that. The systems that are in place right now are not going to be well suited at understanding them and meeting them. And so you need a process. You need to be in a process that is kind of gets as far away from that as you can get. So you want to have a process that keeps you in control, that allows you to make decisions based on your actual situation and what you actually need and what your child actually needs, where it's not coming from some outside source, where you can build in flexibility and creativity into your agreement so that as needs change, so too can your agreement. All sorts of things that you simply can't do in a court-based system, in an adversarial system, but which you can do if you choose a process such as mediation or collaborative divorce that keeps you in control, keeps you in the driver's seat, and that enables you to create a child-centric divorce.
Yes.
Which you can't do in court.
How do you deal with, because a lot of my listeners are dealing with high conflict situations, or otherwise known as domestic violence, that translates into the system. They are dealing with people who are actively working against them in this process. How do you recommend that people do their best to protect their children and advocate for their children when they are often not being met sort of on the playing field, as it were, in these decisions and conversations and all of that?
Right. Okay. So I guess right off the bat, what we have to sort of acknowledge is that in an ideal world, a parent would be able to, two parents who are getting divorced would be able to choose a process where they'd work cooperatively together for the best interest of their children to create, an outcome that meets all of their needs. But the reality is, not every divorce situation is going to be suitable for that kind of a process, right? If you have a situation where one spouse is abusing the other, or threatening the other, or harming or committing acts of violence against the other, then mediation and collaborative process are simply not appropriate. They're simply not appropriate for situations like that, because both mediation and collaborative are voluntary processes where, and involuntary means that both spouses are there of their own free will, and they're not there under duress or, because somebody literally or figuratively has a gun to their head. So if you're in a situation where your spouse is actually harming you or threatening you and not in any sense capable of being in any process like mediation or collaborative, then it doesn't mean that all hope is lost. I want to be really clear about it. You just have to approach this differently. What I would say there is the best thing that you can do, first of all, is to know that there are people who can help you through the divorce process in addition to your lawyer, right? There are people that can help you through who would just be working with you, who could have a lot of knowledge and information about disabilities and about how they affect children and how they affect parents to help advise you and your lawyer, throughout the negotiation process, or if you're in litigation, throughout the litigation process. You could work with a consultant who has a lot of knowledge about what the intersections are between your divorce process and your special needs parenting. So that person could just work with you and could help you figure out what are the good questions to ask your lawyer, or for your lawyer to be asking you. This is what I do. So
I was going to say, sidebar,
so,
P.S. This is Josh.
And in fairness, there's not like there's a million people out there doing this kind of work. This is pretty, this is pretty new. Like I'm kind of starting to work with, this is just starting. This whole idea of a special needs divorce, the intersection between special needs parenting and divorce is really new. But I can help people, either myself or I help connect people to resources and other professionals who have really sophisticated backgrounds in helping parents, helping families navigate complicated decisions about financial planning, about about how to prepare, to negotiate properly for spousal support, all kinds of things. There are going to be some complicated questions that may come up about education, about the child's educational needs. So there's lots of questions that come up in anyone's divorce process, whether you are in an adversarial one or whether you are in a cooperative one. There's a lot of questions. And the first thing that I want every parent to know is that you cannot possibly do this alone. You can't answer all of these questions alone. You need a team. You really do need a team to get through this. Again, no matter which process you're going through, you're going to need a lot of folks helping you. And those people need to have a certain degree of experience and knowledge about special needs parenting. And that's, again, one of the ways I help people is either to be that source of information and to be that source of support, or to connect them with folks in their area who can do that, whether they're financial planners, whether they are divorce coaches, whether they are special education advocates, whether they are care advisors or care planners, because some people, one of their big questions is like, I don't know how much it's going to cost to care for my kid over the course of their life. Their disability is lifelong and it could get worse. And what happens when they become an adult? There's so many questions that impact not just the now, but the future. There are professionals out there whose job it is, whose profession it is to advise parents about this during the divorce process. And I can help people find them.
And these are called care advisors, right? If people who are listening and they're like, wait, what is that? So this is,
what is that? Exactly.
Yeah. So it's a care advisor.
Yeah, there are care. So they go by different names. and that can be one of the confusing parts about this, is that there are different professions. Like one of them would be like a chartered special needs consultant, a CSNC. These are financial advisors and financial planners that have special training and background in planning for the care of somebody with special needs, children or adults, right? And of course, children grow up to become adults, and many of them will continue to have those special needs. So a chartered special needs consultant. There are also special needs planners. So there are organizations and companies like the Academy of Special Needs Planners and the National Care Advisors. These are national networks of professionals who can help people come up with care plans and estimates of costs for what it's going to take to care for people with all kinds of disabilities and special needs. So there's so many different types of professionals. It's sort of mind-blowing. One of the things that I help people do is you got to strike that balance, right? You want to get the right people on the team, but you don't want to have so many people on the team that it's chaos, right? So I try to help people. Yeah, I try to help people figure out what they need and then connect them with the right people to build a team. You know, if you are fortunate enough to be in a situation where you could do a mediated divorce, or you could do a collaborative divorce, those processes are really well designed to let other types of professionals participate in your team process. They're kind of built for that. Whereas an adversarial litigation process is kind of like very lawyer driven, and not all lawyers are great about, letting other people play in the sandbox, as it were. So, but even there, because I'm a lawyer, because I happen to choose this particular path, I can work with people who are in whatever types of processes they're in, even if they're just lawyered up and they are at war. The chances are the lawyer that you're working with probably does not have an extensive background in special needs law and in special education law and all of those other things, because frankly, because lawyers are very specialized. And so, but I can be a good interface between, to help the parents ask the right questions, help the lawyers ask the right questions, help them think through strategically, kind of how do we have to really think about, for example, how the child's changing needs are going to affect your needs for example, changes in alimony and support over time, or child support over time, right? Are the child support needs going to continue after the child is 18? Right. How long? What about what are there things that kind of we're arguing about, for example, like paying for private school, that maybe we shouldn't be arguing about at all because the school district should be paying for that, right? Are there services are there services that we're currently paying for out of pocket or providing at home that really the child should be getting in school? Most divorce lawyers don't know anything about that, in the same way that most special education lawyers don't know anything about divorce. It's very rare that you're going to find a lawyer who's going to know all of that stuff. And even if you did, there's still going to be things that the lawyer can't do for you that you're going to need. There's estate planning needs, right? There's long-term planning needs, particularly when you have a child with disabilities. You got to be really careful in how you do your estate plan. You might need to set up a special needs trust so that you can actually put money away for your child or enable your child to inherit money without compromising their eligibility for public benefits like Medicaid or SSI.
Yes. This is a very specific, this is a very specific thing, right? This special needs trust, which I didn't know about
and why would you, right?
Right, sure, exactly.
And for the people listening, whether you're going to get divorced or not, if you have a child with a disability that would qualify them either now or in the future for public benefits such as Medicaid, right? And Medicaid is health insurance, public health insurance for people with disabilities, but also people with low incomes, sometimes children with disabilities, depending on, it varies from state to state exactly how it works. But bottom line is, there are governmental programs for people with disabilities that provide very valuable, sometimes insurance, sometimes actually money benefits like SSI for people who can't work because they have disabilities and they have low income. So you want to make sure that if your child or your adult son or daughter who's eligible for these things, if those programs require that the person have under a certain amount of money or income or assets, which they do, then what happens if you are not careful and your life insurance policy is in your kid's name and God forbid you pass away and then your kid inherits this money and now all of a sudden they're not eligible for public benefits anymore. And that could happen when, 20 years from now, after, when they're an adult and that could be a huge problem. Every state has a law that basically says you're allowed to set up what's called a special needs trust. And basically if it's set up by someone who knows what they're doing and it has to be done right, it allows you to put money into it's an account. It's a trust fund, essentially, that's managed by someone called a trustee, which could be either someone you pick, or it can be sometimes there are corporate, professional trustees who manage this and make sure that the money is used for the benefit of the beneficiary, the person with the disabilities. The money that's in those accounts is not going to be counted toward the child's eligibility or the adult's eligibility for public benefits. It's sort of walled off. It's screened away. And it's a way that you can, through careful estate planning, protect your son or daughter's current and future eligibility for valuable public benefits, but still be able to make sure that you're putting money aside or that you're providing for your son or daughter, even after you're gone. So this is, again, it's the kind of thing where if you didn't, if the people that you were working with, your divorce lawyer didn't know anything about this, or even your mediator didn't know anything about this, nobody might ever say anything about it. Right. And you'd never know. And then you go ahead and get divorced and you never do this. And you don't even realize that there's kind of this ticking bomb out there that, if grandma, leaves money in her will to your kid and they don't leave it into the trust instead, that could be a real problem for your kid down the road. So that's just one example of kind of a little landmine that's out there that people don't really know is there. And it's why it's so important that you build a team of people that has a lot of experience working with families that are in your situation. Because if you've been working with people who have disabilities, you're much more likely to know about Medicaid and Social Security and special education and all kinds of other things that others just might not know about. So it's why that's why it's so important.
And now for a quick word from our sponsor. The all-new, fully revised Should I Stay or Should I Go? After 3 years of this program existing in the world and changing women's lives, I decided to give it a full makeover. The all-new version has all new videos, a podcast-like audio stream if you want to take the work on the go, and completely updated resources for deepening your learning. The program consists of 6 core modules. The first of which is Who Are You? This is the section in which you dig deeply into your own personal development and get in touch with your inner guide, slay your inner critics, mine for values, and learn how to set healthy boundaries. The second module is How You Learn to Love and helps you understand your attachment style, love languages, and how to properly love and care for the most important person in all of this, yourself. Module 3 is called Why Are Women So Exhausted? And breaks down some of the issues around toxic masculinity and male entitlement, the myth of being a stay-at-home mom, and answers the question, he's fine. Why can't I just be happy? Module 4 is all about understanding abuse and includes videos on trauma bonds, understanding the cycles of abuse, particularly how they play out in your own relationship, and addresses addiction, infidelity, and mental illness. Module 5 is all about healing and moving forward and includes videos about therapy, couples therapy, healing from betrayal, emotional regulation, and grief. This section also includes my 90-minute workshop, Tackling Codependence, as well as my signature relationship inventory that will help you gain complete clarity on all the parts of your marriage and figure out what's his and what's yours. And Module 6 answers the question, is the grass really greener on the other side? With in-depth videos on dating, cultural and religious isolation, and what happens if you end up alone forever. Spoiler, you probably won't. Whether you decide to stay or go, this program will set you up for a lifetime of clarity and fulfillment. And if you've already decided to go, the program will help you unpack all that's happened and help you heal so that you can move forward without repeating the same mistakes that got you here in the first place. This program is priced super low at just $697. And if you use the code PODCAST, when you check out, you'll get $50 off the full price. What are you waiting for? You have been agonizing with this decision for long enough. It's time to finally know. Should you stay or should you go? And now back to our episode.
It cannot be overstated how important it is to look at the long-term needs of your children, because, and even, I don't know, even if you feel like they're not, even if their disabilities are perhaps not as severe, right? I mean, look, if you have a child who has, let's say, cerebral palsy, and you know that this is a lifetime caretaking job, as a parent, then perhaps it's a little bit more obvious that, like, no, I'm actually going to need support for a lot longer because I'm not going to be able to work. And I am going to have to I am the primary caretaker. So therefore I'm going to need support for longer. But even in my situation, right, my son is 17 and a half. In July, he turns 18. His all support stops. But this kid lives with me full time. And I am 100% responsible for all of his care, his feeding, his right. And when when I go over that cliff, I'm even looking at that going, well, shit, and granted, we got divorced when he was 3. We didn't know anything about who he would become or, whatever. And, he's probably going to be here for another couple of years. And that's amazing and wonderful, but also expensive.
Well, look, your point is absolutely right, which is we really want people to try to plan ahead as much as they can, or think about the future as much as they can. But you hit the nail on the head when you said it. It's impossible to know what things are going to be like, even in the example you gave of a child with cerebral palsy, we don't know necessarily,
right?
How the needs are going to change exactly. So the point I want to make here, and I think this really applies to everybody. Honestly, it applies to everybody, even if they don't even have kids at all. But it really matters when you have kids, and it really matters when you have kids with special needs and you're going through divorce, which is this. To the extent that you can build a divorce agreement, that has flexibility built into it, that will serve you very well.
Yes.
So this is one of the main reasons why mediation and collaborative divorce are so advantageous when you can do, because it gives you the ability to create an agreement that has built into it provisions that say, here's what we're going to do if the needs change, if our situations change and we find ourselves needing different things than we need today as we sit here getting divorced.
Yes.
So building in a process that at the very least says, if we get to a point where we have to change this agreement, or one of us feels we really need to change this, here's what we're going to do. We're going to agree, for example, to come back to mediation. Or we're going to agree not to initiate court proceedings right away, but we're going to try to engage in some sort of peaceful dispute resolution process.
Yeah.
Even just that is so valuable because, change is inevitable for everybody. When you're dealing with a situation where perhaps maybe the parents don't agree, or we don't know, or nobody seems to really totally understand exactly what the child's needs are going to be, despite your best efforts, you want to have a process that lets you avoid a situation where in the future, one or both of you is stuck with an agreement that made sense 10 years ago, but no longer makes sense now that the needs have changed so much.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
we didn't expect that this was going to get so much worse, that one of us is not going to be able to work, or will not be able to have a full-time job. And now suddenly my income earning capacity has changed.
Yeah. And I don't want to have to take you to court and sue you. Right.
Or I don't want to have to feel like I'm going back on my agreements, or that we're somehow breaking the promise again. Right.
Yeah.
Because you don't need to re-traumatize yourself. You could create an agreement that says, listen, we acknowledge sitting here right now that we might come to a point where we feel we have to change things. No, we don't necessarily know sitting here right now, but here's what we'll do. We will come back together and we will talk about it. And we will work with a mediator. Maybe, if we had a good experience with this mediator, maybe we'll come back to the same one. Right.
Yeah.
We'll at least give ourselves the option of avoiding a really expensive, unpleasant, uncertain process down the road. When by definition, we're not going to be in a really great state of mind to be dealing with something like that. Just that alone, flexibility. One of the things that I help people do with those agreements is I help them think about what are the criteria that we're going to use to make decisions going forward. Right? Are we going to acknowledge right now that our child's needs, the severity of those needs, the impact of those needs on us and our time and our employment, we're going to say that those matter, so that down the road, if one of us comes back and says, hey, I think we need to revisit this agreement, they'll be able to say, and remember when we agreed that our child's needs could change, and that would be a reason to come back together. That is such a gift that you're giving to yourself in the future, to say we're already agreeing that this matters, and it's going to matter 10, 20 years from now too. It could matter. We're agreeing on the criteria. We're agreeing on that it's appropriate. It's okay to come back and say, hey, we need to revisit this. And just think about the difference between coming out of a divorce with an agreement like that and one that doesn't even, where you never had any such conversations, and the only option you're going to have is 10 years down the road to either be stuck with whatever agreement you had, that you made at the time, or to go to court.
Right. Or to hope that your ex, your co-parent actually agrees with you. Right. I mean, because it's a crapshoot. Yeah, even in the most amicable of divorces, you still have, like I said before, these subjective views of what a special need might be, or how much extra care they might need. Right. I mean, it's like, so having this worked out, what it sounds like it does is, instead of having your divorce decree be sort of a closed or dead document, right? It keeps it as a living document. It keeps it as something that we're able to reopen if and when necessary.
Exactly right, Kate. And this is really actually the key to what we call a child-centered divorce, right? You want a process that's ultimately going to acknowledge and respect the fact that your life as co-parents, your child's relationship with you and their other parents, is going to continue after this divorce is over. There is a whole lifetime. There's several lifetimes that are going to happen after the judge stamps the document that says you're officially divorced, because you're not going to stop being parents. And, part of doing that right, part of doing a child-centered divorce right, is to have a process that acknowledges and prepares for the fact that the decisions that you're making today during this process are going to have an impact afterwards.
Right.
And that life is going to change. People are going to change. Circumstances are going to change afterwards. So we don't want to do anything during this process that's going to really hamstring us down the road later if we can avoid it. We want to have the benefits of this cooperative process extend and continue on afterwards. And
that's right.
Big piece of that is that flexibility. It's that, keep it alive, let's have a process that enables us to continue respecting each other and our children, even after we're divorced.
That's right. And whether your kids have special needs or not, right? I love the idea that, of having a clause or something in there that says that you will agree to maybe look at this in a year or 5 years, maybe
Yes.
it's 1 year, 5 years, then 10 years, that you're going to keep coming back to this. Is our co-parenting agreement working? I will tell you, if I had to, I've been divorced for almost 15 years. And so if I were to, I can't even imagine what's in my co-parenting agreement at this point, because my ex and I are able to work together, to work for what's in the best interest of our child moment to moment, right? Over the last, 14 and a half years. But if I had to look at that document and go through like what it actually said, I would probably laugh, that we would be locked into this thing for life that we wrote when he was 3. They should all be revisited, right? We should all have these periods of revisiting at least the parenting agreement, not the entire divorce decree, because Lord knows that could open a can of horrendous worms, but at least the co-parenting agreement. And if you need to, you also agree that you'll do so with a co-parenting coordinator. And there are so many of them out there, many of whom you and I work with and know, that to work with a co-parenting coordinator to just sit down in 2 years. Is this working? What do we need to rework?
Yeah. And that's powerful. Thinking about this idea of building in a period of time to say, we are going to come back and talk about this in a year or in 2 years. Think about how powerful that is. When you are, one of the toughest things about going through the divorce process is this constant feeling that the stakes are so high. What if we get this wrong? What if I agree to something that is not actually going to meet my needs? That it is so scary to think that, you're somehow etching things in stone. That's one of the greatest sources of stress that people have going through the divorce process.
Right. That's right.
But to say, listen, and the other thing is that makes agreements really difficult to reach. So if both people think about this, if you're negotiating with someone else and both of you feel like you are going to be literally signing an agreement that's etched in a stone tablet, think about how much harder it's going to be to get both sides to agree on anything.
Right.
Because the stakes are so high. But what if the stakes don't have to be quite that high? What if what you're talking about is, this is what we're going to agree to for the next year or the next 2 years? You don't have to, think your blood pressure just goes down just hearing that, right? It's way easier to get an agreement if it's for a shorter period of time. Now, the flip side of that is many people are very much wanting total closure.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was going to say.
Right?
Many people's blood pressure went up when they were like, wait, I have to do this again in 2 years? Right.
I know. But that's why working with this is what a skillful mediator or a skillful collaborative professional team can really help people with, is really striking the right balance there. Between building in enough security and enough closure and enough assurance, but also enough flexibility. This is an art, and the judges in family courts are not skilled in this art.
No, they're not.
That is not at all. But a good team of peacemakers, of collaborative professionals, of mediators, of co-parenting specialists can actually help you do this. It can be done, because really it's about what you guys need. What does security and certainty mean to you? And what flexibility do you need at the same time? Because really, both of those are strong interests, and creating agreements that meet everybody's interests is what mediators do. And it's what collaborative professionals do. Those processes are really designed to help parents identify what's really important to them, their interests, right? And help them create agreements that meet them better than any of the alternatives, right? So it can be done. But unfortunately, I think most people never get the opportunity even to experience or even try to create agreements like this, because most people who go through divorce very quickly wind up on a fast track to court. And that's just, it's the hardest, for me, it's just the hardest thing about this whole system is that people very understandably pick up the phone, call a lawyer, and 99 times out of 100, the lawyer that they call knows one way to resolve a divorce, which is pretty adversarial. And they never even mention, or they never even, the person never even hears about mediation as an option. They never even hear about collaborative divorce, which does not involve going to court at all. And so they just very quickly wind up on an adversarial track, never even knowing the other paths that were available to them.
I try to hammer this into everyone's heads as much as I possibly can, which is that when people say, okay, I guess, it's time to get divorced or whatever, the first thing they do is call an attorney. And then they immediately get sucked into this adversarial system. And you should have a consultation with an attorney so that you know that what your rights are. And then you should work as much as possible towards mediation or collaborative. And if you're doing mediation, you should have a consulting attorney, again, because the mediator is a neutral. They are not there to advise you. They are just there to help you come to consensus with your the opposite or whatever, your soon to be ex. So important.
You're giving great advice there. Great advice. Which everybody who's listening to this is going to benefit from that. I mean, there's nothing that I would like more than to be the first person that a parent who has a child with disabilities who's thinking about divorce, to be the first person that person calls. Yeah. Not because I don't represent people in court anymore. I don't really do a lot of representation as a lawyer at all. I work as a mediator. I work as a consultant to collaborative teams. I consult with parents who have kids with disabilities in terms of navigating, finding other professionals and things like that. So I don't want them to call me first because I want to be their lawyer. I don't. No. And most of the time I couldn't, even if I wanted to be, because they're calling me from someplace other than Pennsylvania. Right. I want to be there first because I want to tell them about these different options so that they can get on the right track early on. It's actually one of the reasons why therapists are among the most important people out there in terms of spreading the word. If there are any therapists listening, folks who work with people that are in marital conflict or who are contemplating divorce, it's actually, they're the ones that are in the best. Clergy people, right? Yep. Therapists, clergy people, doctors.
Yep. They're sort of the front line.
Yeah, the front line. Yep. These are the people that really need to be telling folks, hey, there's actually multiple ways of doing this. There are processes that keep you in control of the outcome, right? There are processes that keep you out of court that are more efficient, that are less expensive, right? We didn't mention this, but it's worth saying, kind of obvious, but the cost of the process matters a lot, and it matters more to parents who have kids with disabilities because your resources are even more constrained. The dollars that you are spending fighting in court are dollars that you could be spending helping your kid get what she needs.
That's right.
And that's it's just as stark as that. So having an efficient process, right? Having one that doesn't waste resources is of extreme value to folks whose resources are under extreme pressure. And parents who have kids with disabilities are people who are among the most pressured financially of anybody. It could be the biggest reason why choosing one of these processes is better. The other thing I really want to if you don't mind, just hop back to something that you said earlier. I think a lot of people listening might be thinking to themselves, wow, mediation sounds great. Collaborative process sounds great, but there's no way in my case, there's no way my spouse would ever be willing or able to do something like that. Our situation is either too complex or we disagree too much maybe some people feel that they're in a high conflict situation. That term gets used, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to know something here, which is that mediation and collaborative process are not just for the quote easy cases.
That's right.
They're not.
They're not.
It's totally true that they're not appropriate in situations where there's violence and threats and extreme situations where it would be impossible for both people to be there voluntarily.
Right.
But there's a lot of other cases, where there's plenty of conflict. People disagreeing completely about what the kids need. One parent thinks the kid has autism. The other one thinks the kid is perfectly fine. There's all kinds of situations that are loaded with conflict that actually could do very well in mediation or in the right collaborative team.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want people, I don't want people to feel like they have to basically have this utopian situation of, me and my ex, we get along great. And, things just didn't work out. We grew apart, but we really, we get along just fine and we can do mediate. No. I mean, that's wonderful. If you're in that situation, great. Yeah. Mediation and collaborative would be awesome. But you can have a lot of conflict and still benefit from and be able to access a mediator or a collaborative team.
Absolutely.
And those professionals should be able to, they'll do a screening in the beginning, right? We'll do a screening in the beginning to help make sure that you're not in one of those situations that would make it inappropriate to be there. What I really want people to think is assume, just give yourself the benefit of the doubt, even if you kind of don't believe it. Give yourself the benefit of the doubt early on that maybe one of these processes could work. And let the mediator and the collaborative team be the ones to help you figure out whether it's not.
And Josh, I love that you said all of that. I think that is so important. And I want to add to that, the number of emails I get or messages or whatever, where people say like, my case is really unique and it's really different. Mm-hmm. And it's not.
It's not, and it is, right? It's both, right?
Yes. Every case is unique. Every case is unique.
Exactly.
Right. Every case is unique, but there's very little that those of us working in this profession have not heard before or dealt with before in some combination or whatever. And it feels unique to you because you have never gotten divorced before, or if you have, it was different, right?
Right.
To us, it's like, we're like, yep, totally. Yep, we get it. We get the world of it in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
This is what we do all day, every day.
Right. And, look, I really do feel that sentiment that my situation is unique, it needs to be acknowledged that is both true.
Yes.
You are right. It's true. You are in a unique situation. Nobody else is in your marriage.
That's right.
Or nobody else is in your relationship. Nobody else has your kids. Nobody else has your situation. And that alone is a good reason, if possible, to choose a process that keeps you and your partner in the driver's seat.
Yes.
Because it is unique.
It is,
and
right.
No judge is going to care nearly as much or know nearly as much about your situation as you guys will. That's number one.
Right. Yep.
Number two is there are a lot of things about your situation that feel unique, but you are not alone.
That's right.
Your situation is unique, but you're not alone. Many people have been through similar situations, have been confronted with similar challenges, have been experiencing similar emotions. So you can feel validated in the truth that yes, your situation is unique, but you're not isolated. You're not alone. And when you are a parent of a kid with disabilities, those are very similar sentiments that come up all the time. There's this feeling of, my kid is really unique.
Yes.
And you're right. Your kid is really unique. And even if your kid has the same diagnosis as the kid next door, there's still going to be loads of differences between the two kids, right? That not everybody with autism is the same. Let's say that right now. Not every two kids with cerebral palsy is the same, obviously.
That's right.
It can be very, sometimes I think parents who have kids with disabilities struggle with this all the time, which is that people, their children get labeled, and that other people will make assumptions or judgments or about what their kid needs or who their kid is based on that label.
Yeah.
So
right.
This probably is the biggest reason why it's important that professionals who are helping people through divorce have training and experience working with families who have kids with disabilities, because all parents, but particularly these parents, they need to be understood. They need to be heard. They need to be, they need people working with them who know or can empathize with or appreciate what they're going through. I mean, this to me is when people ask me, why do I do this work? Or how did I even come to do this work in the first place? Well, it's pretty straightforward. All of the work that I've done is as a special education lawyer, as a teacher, as a mediator, it's all been with families who have kids with disabilities. Those have been the families that I've been just worked with for a very, very long time. And the thing that's really jumped out at me over the years is that the more families that I worked with who were in situations like this, the more I was able to show the next family that I get it.
Yep.
I get it. I get it. I know I'm going to learn. I'm going to appreciate your unique situation, but my work with other families that have gone through similar things is going to help me help you. You're going to feel understood. You're going to feel appreciated and respected for what you're going through and for the challenges that you have, because I've been through it with many, many other families. When you can build a team of professionals, whether they be lawyers or divorce coaches or financial advisors, all these other people that help folks through divorce, the dream is that each and every one of those people will have lots of experience working with families who have kids with disabilities, so that they will appreciate what these families are going through, that they'll understand it. They'll know what questions to ask. They'll know what resources to connect people to. They'll be able to spot those issues. They'll be able to sort of validate the emotions and the experiences that these families are going through because they have experience with it.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference when you work with a professional who's never worked with a family that has a kid with a disability before. That person is they may be great. Maybe they might be wonderful. They might just knock it out of the park on the first shot. But the chances are they're not really going to get it way somebody who has either been through it themselves or has worked with lots of families who have been through it is going to get it. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you deserve a team. You deserve professionals who get you, who appreciate the uniqueness of your situation, but also can relate to the things that other families have gone through and can use that to help you, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time.
That's right.
There's a lot of people that have walked this before, and that's a great comfort to parents.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Before we sign off, do you work with, is there obviously as an attorney, you can only work with people in Pennsylvania or the states that you're licensed in. But in this work, in this sort of advising work, you can work with people all over anywhere. Yes?
That's the beautiful part of it. In fact, mediators, this is kind of an interesting thing. Mediators can work with folks all over the country. They're most financial advisors can as well. And I, as a consultant, as a special needs consultant, I can work with people all over the country.
Great.
It's true. The only way in which I'm sort of restricted to Pennsylvania is if I'm working as a lawyer.
Okay. Right.
So that's another great thing. By the way, another great thing is that I hope that encourages more professionals to want to do this work, because it opens up a whole world, a whole country of possibilities,
right?
Of mediators. Hey, mediators out there that are listening, you can work with people all over the country doing this work.
And you should be trained by Mosten Guthrie Institute.
Yes, absolutely.
Susan
Thank you
Guthrie.
for that.
Yep, absolutely. Where can people find you that want to talk to you or hire you
The best way to reach me is by email first. And then if you shoot me an email, I'll connect with you and we can set up a Zoom and talk and we can go from there. I'm sure you'll put this in the link, but if you want my email address, it's jkershenbaum@gmail.com, JKERSHENB as in boy, AUM as in Matthew, @gmail.com. And Kate, if you put that in the description, then people can just reach out to me. And and we'll set up a Zoom and we'll talk.
I love it. I love it. I have a feeling you might be inundated. So it's my pleasure. I talk with people, with parents all over the country about these issues all the time. And sometimes the best thing I can do is help them connect with people in their area, help them find resources, help them think of those questions that they never even realized they needed to ask. That's right.
People don't know what they don't know. When you have a kid, they say they never hand you an owner's manual. And when you have a kid with disabilities, they sure never hand you an owner's manual
sure
as well.
As hell do not. Oy vey.
But what I can do is, I don't have an owner's manual for your kid, but I can help you get close to that, which is help you find the people, help you connect with the folks that are going to get you the answers to those questions that you need, help you ask the right questions to the teams that you're working with, and help you think through what path would be best for you and your partner to be on as you go through divorce. And this is also even if you don't wind up getting divorced, just to help you get on the right track, help you get on the right path.
Great. Josh, thank you so much. This is just such an incredible wealth of information. And I know that it's going to be really well received by my audience. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you, Kate. And what a gift you've given your audience by dedicating some time to this topic that so few people really talk about. So thank you for that.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in and leave me a review. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at the Divorce Survival Guide. I'll see you next time, and until then, remember, you, my love, deserve to be happy.